Good afternoon and happy Thursday. Just wanted to bring to you a little bit of a history lesson here as we've been working on the lawsuit to challenge Jay Inslee's two emergency proclamations issued in March of 2022. We have been doing a lot of digging and research into the history of some of these laws, specifically Revised Code of Washington 43.06.210, which, as you see on this screen here, it is the one that provides the one mandatory duty of the governor in declaring or terminating a state of emergency. Specifically, it says, provided that the governor must terminate said state of emergency proclamation when order has been restored to in the area affected. Couple of points here that are relevant to our briefing. I'm not going to bore you with those, but what I want to look at is, if you look at the bottom part here, you know, these dates where it says chapter, section, etc., and then all these semicolons. Obviously the most recent update to this law was 2013, and in 1969 is when it was adopted. So as we looked at what was the legislature's intent in adopting this, we went back to the 1969, and if you're all interested, certainly comment on this, and we can actually do a walkthrough of where do you find the House bill, discussion points. So there's the difference of finding the bill itself and then finding the historical documentation. But anyway, fast forward to what we found. In 1969, RCW 43.06.210 was adopted in Senate Bill 392. It was titled Senate Bill 392, Broadening Governor's Powers to Handle Public Disorders and Providing Specific Penalties for Unlawful Conduct During Disorder. It was co-sponsored by a gentleman named Senator Anderson, who unfortunately he actually died just a few months ago. It would have been great to pick his brain about, hey, you adopted this almost 50 years ago, or over 50 years ago. What's your take on how it's been used now? Anyway, it talks about the passage, which you see here. You see the modifications, but then there are these points of inquiry, which is the actual floor debate. And this, I know I'm geeking out here, but this is pretty exciting. It's fun to read this because you get to hear who challenged it and why. Initially, Senator McCutcheon challenged it, asking specifically, what are you trying to do here? Are you trying to invoke military powers? And who gives the governor the authority for the troop and to use the troops and the Washington State Patrol? And Senator Anderson says, well, you know, I find this one a little too close to home. Jay Inslee's yet to do this, but I believe it's on the tip of his tongue. The last thing any governor would want to do would be to get into that arena, right? In that area. In that, he's mentioning that he doesn't believe any governor would enact the troops. So we'll see how long this lasts with Jay Inslee, right? But subsequently in the floor analysis, you get Senator Dore, and he has some pretty phenomenal jabs here. He says, in expressing his concern, he says, it, meaning this bill, makes the governor almost a dictator. As I read the sections, though, it looks like it is at his whim what he declares an emergency. That's nail on the head for 2020 to 2022. And then he expresses a concern about whether or not there are any safeguards. Whether or not he says, when the government, you know, he's concerned that the governor is going to overstep his bounds, and says, when is the government going to be handed back to the Constitution? This is all over and above the Constitution. Senator Dore has since passed long ago. I wish we could talk to him about his comments. Now, Senator Anderson's response back, he says, now the purpose of this particular bill in setting out these carefully drawn emergency powers is to retain the full system that we have of protection that a person has built into the law from the police. And he talks about martial law. Kind of goes off on there. Then he says, you asked, in response to Senator Dore, you asked about checks and balances. We specifically write in this law that the governor must terminate the state of emergency as soon as order has been restored in the area affected. We're talking about obviously a legal remedy that is to be used in extremis in a situation. Senator Dore then asks permission for a subsequent question and says, where in the bill does it provide that citizens like myself think an emergency is over and the governor should return the powers? Where is the mechanism or the machinery in the event the governor doesn't agree to have his power terminated? And this is really critical, not only to our briefing, but to today. Not today specifically, but today's times. Anderson responds, all right, at the bottom of page 1, Senate Bill number 392, it says, provided that the governor must terminate this state of emergency proclamation when order has been restored in the area affected. We have left this within the realm of present law, of course, which means that simply a writ of mandamus or writ of prohibition in a civil court could test this particular situation. He goes on to say, so it would be a writ of mandamus or a writ of prohibition, Senator, and special mechanics are not required in my judgment as an attorney because they already exist in law when you have mandatory language compelling the governor to declare the state of emergency terminated. I know this one's getting long, but I really wanted to read through this, and this is the value of having these historical documents. We can go through and say, okay, I don't believe Jay Inslee I believe he's well outside of his authority, and the state says, okay, well, you need to prove it. There one prior to 2020 and 2022, there was one Supreme Court case that was on point related to Mount St. Helens. So I don't have a whole lot to go off, but what I can do is look at what was said on the floor, how they debated this, what were the concerns 50, 60 years ago, and we found it. We found that what we're seeing unfold before us is exactly what both of these senators, the proponent and the one objecting to this, when you look at the actual vote at the end, Senator Dore was the only nay vote. So you have both the sponsor and the one that tried to reject this bill, who are very concerned about seeing things unfold as we're seeing today. So it's very relevant not only to our briefing, but it's a great history lesson. Again, maybe not everyone's as geeky as I am on this stuff, but I think it's phenomenal to watch this unfold and really go back to history and understand where it came from and how far we've departed from its true intent. So again, I know it's a long video. Have a great day. God bless. Thanks for your support. As always, please continue with your support, your prayers, and your donations where possible. smfjb.org. Have a great day. We'll talk soon.